Shit. We are live on the internet.
Anything you say will go out on the internet as of right now.
What is the internet?
What is that?
We have to be very careful to tell people that because they don't think they're on the internet and then they're on the internet forever.
Even if we're not recording, I should probably open up our recording app too, huh?
I mean,
we definitely got to record it. My mom's got to see it.
Want to? We're live if she's on Facebook right now.
You think I want my mom on Facebook? Nobody should be on Facebook.
A track. Test. Mic check. Test. That sounds perfect.
Sibilance.
I did sibilance and nobody knew what that was, Dan.
I still don't even know if I know. You probably even told me.
Old Saturday Night Live skit.
Yeah, Tom Hanks, Wayne's World.
Tom Hanks. He comes out to test the mics and he's like, sibilance.
They
still don't know what you're talking about.
No.
I know Saturday Night Live. I know Wayne's World. Tom who? No, I'm just kidding. It's out there. Beer.
How about a beer? Dude, UConn's gonna lose. God. Ah. How much is that hurting you? I have them 1 2 times.
What are you checking your bracket right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Did something just happen?
UConn is going to lose.
Dang.
Well, they're down 5 with 27 seconds left, so a miracle could happen. But
yeah, good luck with that.
I went 7-1 on the early games. I felt good about that.
Really?
Yeah, wasn't bad.
Who you in the pool with?
What's that?
Who you in the pool with? Is that what you said?
I'm not in a pool with that. I just do it just to do it.
For the love of the game. Look at that guy.
I'm a March Madness junkie.
Self-bragging rights.
All right. I think we are ready to rock. So what I'm going to do next, now that we got some viewers coming in, I'm going to hit the record buttons. We're going to do this audio, and we're going to actually do the real thing.
Cool.
Do the real recording. All right. You ready, Mr. Steve? Dude, that sounds like my chair.
Yeah, I'll have to try not to move.
All right, here we go.
Crack a beer and join John and Mr. Steve as they explore the people, places, and brews of the craft beer world. You are now entering the Might Be Brews podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Might Be Brews, episode 73. My name is John. With me, as always, Mr. Steve. How you doing tonight?
I'm really glad I was able to make it here because I really was like 70-20 or 70-30 not going to make it.
Really?
The March Madness is acting up.
Yeah.
March Madness. Catch it.
I'm not in it. I'm not in it at all.
Boo.
If you want to call like the Formula One season starting March Madness, I'd be okay with that. You can rebrand it.
Doesn't start till Sunday.
It starts Friday. It's already technically started, I'll say.
Yeah, they're dicking around.
Yeah, well, they're testing.
They're sandbagging. There's some sandbagging
probably
going on.
That's what I hear.
Guaranteed.
That's what I hear. They say Mercedes every year says we got to get our shit together, we're struggling, and then they just come out the first race and blow everybody away.
It's coming.
We'll see what happens. But guys, we have a fantastic, very exciting guest here with us. We've got Dan from the Furrow Blendery and Ghost Garden. Dan, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well. I haven't caught the madness yet. We'll see. There's still some March left.
Still some March.
I feel like I'm checking a fake bracket during the entire thing.
Yeah. I've got zero madness.
No.
But the March I'll take. Dan, I'm like super excited to talk to you, right? So I feel like I was like a low-key fan early on from like your brewing days. And knew about you, heard about you, and you started to, from what I felt, my perception, you were getting this good reputation in the beer world, and then I hear about this new thing that you're doing, and I got really excited about it because I was just starting to learn about things like barrel aged and wild fermentation and blending and things like that like weren't even on my radar. I was just like, oh, I think I like mosaic hops more than this hop, and still trying to figure out what I like. And then as I start realizing this whole other this whole other level of beer, it's exciting to hear that there is somebody local that's putting a thing like that together. So
Yeah,
I'm really excited to talk to you.
Handful of operations around the Philly area, but it's not a style, it's not an approach to beer that a lot of people go about, just because it's unpredictable. I mean, you dump a lot of beer to make good beer in the barrel world. It's unpredictable. You know where it's going to end up. It's not something that's necessarily scalable. And so if you're looking to start a brewery, start a blendery, there's not a whole lot of ways you can do it. Where usually you see it the other way, where it's folks who have a brewery where they're putting out all their stainless stuff, their IPAs and all the things that kind of keep the lights on. But then they kind of have some barrels squirreled away in the back. They're like, oh yeah, we decided to play around with something. Where to be dedicated to just oak, there are places that do it, but there's not a lot relative to folks who are doing stainless fermentation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's we recently had a guest on that did this whole movie on bottle conditioned beer, and he spent time in Belgium, right, with what is it, Dravontine, and I don't think he said he did the tequila, and he said it much more, he pronounced it much better, but Cantillon and whatever else. But like the whole discussion we had with him was just completely fascinating to me, to realize how much more difficult and how much time goes into these things, these wild fermented barrel beers, things like that. So I'm super excited to get into it. But first, what we really have to do is start with the background question, right? All new guests, we have to ask you, what was your first craft beer experience? Try to walk us through the first time you had that beer that made you go, holy crap, there's something really special going on here.
Yeah, I have two. The things that come to mind, I have two bad answers. The first one is peach strawberry blonde.
Oh, there you go.
I thought that was really like my 19-year-old self thought that was the shit.
Pete's Wicked Shoot Off.
Yeah. I don't even know if where the brewery is, or if they even make anything like that anymore. Between that and Sam Adams Summer Ale, which the thing about the first things where I was like, oh, okay, this is a little bit different. This has some ingredients I haven't seen before. It's not as like a romantic of a story. I'm not sure, what do people typically say? Like, what's their go-to?
The most I think we've heard is Sierra Nevada Pale Ale.
Yeah,
I think that's the most popular.
Common, yeah.
I like being drawn to having a couple of new ingredients I'd never seen before, and then just basically underage drinking as well, which I would never promote or condone. But
that's not far off
concept.
That's not far off from my story, because I really started off not liking beer at all, and I was drinking Twisted Teas and Jack and Cokes, and that was like my young drinking days early on. And when I first started to get that taste of beer, not even craft beer really, right, but Leinenkugel summer shandies that turned into Blue Moons and Shock Tops, and these citrus wheat beers, and but then I actually, when I fell in love with like the Blue Moons and stuff, I put a kegerator in my house, and I constantly had Sam Adams Summer Ale on.
Yeah.
Like that's one that like my wife and I both loved. That it was a good, it's been a long time since I've had it, but a nice big body beer that's not a crazy ABV, and still crushable. So it's like, it kind of was just something. But my real gateway that blew my mind was a Sculpin. The first time I had a Sculpin, it was probably one of the early like just IPAs that I ever had, with all the hop and malt and everything. I was just like, holy crap, there's so much going on here compared to a lot of the stuff that I had before. So that's kind of my thing. But it's funny you brought up the Summer Ale, because that's definitely one of the earlier beers that I had.
Yeah, I was lucky. I mean, my phase, my phase of drinking shitty beer it was basically 1 year, freshman year, and then I was lucky enough to kind of get linked up with some guys on the hockey team who somehow were all into drinking craft beer, and so they kind of steered me away from that pretty early on. But I remember, freshman year, helping people with their work and doing was it Molson Triple X? I charged them a case of Molson Triple X to help them with their work. So that was 1 year when I was dumpster diving, and then soon after I started getting into craft stuff. Growing up in Central PA, I'm a Trogs homer. With their current brewery in Hershey, my parents' house is about a mile away from it. So I going to Trogs early on, going to Appalachian Harrisburg early on. Early on in finding beer, I had places I went where I thought I was, especially with Trogs, I lucked out in having an awesome brewery. Besides making good beer, being good people, and just being a good operation, that was sort of my hallmark for this is what I think a brewery should be. The Trogner brothers and what they did. So I got lucky to be raised in that pedigree. Then when I moved down to this area to do my master's at Villanova, I was lucky enough to get a job while I was doing my master's at the beer yard down in Wayne. And so working with Matt Geyer down there, I got linked in with a guy who helped to create the brands that we love. Matt Geyer down in Wayne's a little tiny distributor, but he was pretty fundamental in the days where Victory was getting going and Dogfish didn't have a huge footprint in outside of the Philly city. And so having a guy with that kind of institutional knowledge, access to awesome beer, but access to people who make beer was a huge influence on my education, not just as a brewer, but as a person who loves the world of beer. So him forcing them, not a generally outgoing person. So him forcing me to say meet this bar owner, meet this brewer, meet this guy who does wholesale. Not just the brewers, the people who are responsible for making this industry tick, and go talk to this guy. That was a huge part of my research, my free research for this lifestyle. It's not just the drinking and the making. It's understanding the importance of the guys who have to move it as well. So
that's wild. So you're talking about kind of the early parts of your career. At what point did making beer become something that you wanted to do on a homebrew small scale, and how did that evolve?
Well, yeah, when I went off to college, had a good time, came home, and my parents were pretty clear with me, you're not going to drink at home while you're here. And, you're in our house, you're not underage drinking. So I was like, well, what if I make it? Sure, whatever. At that point, they just threw their hands. Yeah, whatever. If you take the time to make it, go nuts.
Yeah.
That's how I got into it. But during college, I worked at a hotel, and I worked a bunch of different jobs there. But I also did a couple of years of night shifts. So basically, I had 8 hours paid to sit while everyone else is asleep and just read. And read. And being an English major, obviously I read a lot of stuff for school. But I had 8 hours a night to just study and read everything I could find about beer. So having that chunk of my life, I would not recommend working at nights to anybody. It's terrible. No. It messes with everything. But if you need 8 hours a night where nobody's bothering you, and it's that. Having that time just to sit and read everything I could possibly find, I fell in love with it. Just as sort of a research. How do I do this? How do I figure it out? So that's how I kind of got into brewing. Then at college, I was brewing and not brewing but fermenting in my dorm room. I'd have a couple carboys in the dorm room fermenting out and packaged there as well. So I made it work. But I would kind of go home to Hershey, to my parents' house to brew, then drive the wart 2 hours up to Central PA. I went to Juniata. It's my alma mater, but I would drive the wart 2 hours back up to school to ferment. So that's the kind of crazy that I was involved with.
Yeah, that's wild. Crazy story. I was about to ask, what do you mean that you were just fermenting there? But that's nuts.
I wonder at what point does the wort become not legal to have at college? Not illegal, but against the college rules. They're hey, you got beer in there. No, I don't. I have wort. What are you talking about?
Yeah, this is pretty much right now. Yeah.
I feel like at some point they wouldn't split hairs. So you gotta get this crap out of here. Let's go.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
my RA actually said, if you can sneak a keg past the security desk, call me. So I don't think it would have been a problem when I was at Temple. They would have just been like, fuck,
Nice.
you're making it? Go do whatever you're doing.
Yeah, go nuts. Don't bother me. Don't ever knock on my door again.
Before we talk about this first beer that we're drinking, kind of walk us to the next step, right? So you're home brewing, going to school, you're working, you're studying, you know, and then you start getting some jobs, right, in the industry. But how did you end up becoming an actual brewer with a legit brewery?
Yeah, I mean that's it's appropriate that we are drinking this beer to sidetrack it, but not sidetrack it. This saison is released under the Noble Toil series. So as I'm doing small batches and like just fun one-off blends, I just created a series for it instead of having to rename and redo art for everything. So okay, this is you know the series of beers I'll put up when I have a small amount of things. But this one was brewed with Free Will. But not just with Free Will, but with a guy named Nate Walter, who I'm not sure if you know him. He's one of the few white guys with dreads. You can't miss him.
He's one of the guys that I don't know, but I know of, and I feel like most people know of.
He likes it that way. He likes it that way. Yeah, he's not a super outgoing guy, but we brewed this beer together. Last year, Ida flooded out their cellar. So I'm not sure if you heard the news on that, but I mean, there's just for me, just seeing that much work and years of liquid just being destroyed was pretty nuts. But of course, Nate's the kind of guy where I text him like, "Hey man, that's awful," and he's like, "Well, you start over," and like it just didn't phase him at all. So you know, in light of that, I asked him down to brew with me here and do a project together. So it's a special beer with a special person. Which back to your question. My first foot in the professional brew house was because of Nate. He was brewing at Mackenzie's in Malvern at the time, and I was home brewing and doing sours and stuff at home that people enjoyed, and they asked for bottles of home brew and stuff like that. And Nate let me come and make some wort on his system and put it in barrels and play around with it. So it's great that you asked that question while we're drinking this beer, because that was 12, 13 years ago now. That he gave me my first, it was unpaid internship, but basically coming and working with him to learn how to run a professional system. So I mean, this beer is my little thank you. This many years on, getting to kind of hand it back a little bit. Getting handed back was special. And on top of that, I don't know why he never told me this, but Nate left Mackenzie's to go up to Free Will, and basically the culture that was in the barrels at Mackenzie's, he finally told me now after 10 years, they took that culture up to Free Will and used that as sort of one of the home cultures for their cellar program, which I never knew. But I wish you would have told me a while ago, because it would have been nice to know. It doesn't matter. It's Brett. I mean, it's stuff that I grew up. It's not. There's nothing proprietary about it, but it would have been cool. Right. So this beer was brewed. This beer is brewed with cultures from some of the last bottles that Nate was able to save from the cellar. Nice. So the idea that this 12 years ago, this culture starts in a barrel in Malvern. It goes up to Free Will for many, many years. And now, 12 years later, it's coming back to Malvern, from his bottles. And, we're keeping it going here in some of our barrels. So I don't know how I could make a prettier story that just shows how much care people put in this. Particularly with, all brewers really should, and most do care about the product, but people who are devoted to barrel aging, people who take the time with projects to be ruthless and say, this is not good, this is good, and be tough on themselves. It takes a lot of care. And so just having this culture handed back and forth over, 12 years was pretty special. So that's what you're drinking now.
That's wild.
It's almost the Mackenzie bottles, I feel like almost they weren't popular when they came out, but then the more people just kind of realized, like, wow, these are really good, and people would pull them out of their cellar and be like, wow, they did some really great stuff in that bottle program when Nate was there.
Yeah, I mean, for being a little brew pub that sells a lot of like Mackenzie's Light and stuff like that. Nate was just doing these projects on the side, and nobody was paying attention, but I was lucky enough to get to work with him on some of those.
he was almost genius in the way it's like, yeah, you're right. They make that light lager, the stuff that they can sell upstairs. And he's like, I'm just going to start squirreling away these little bottles and we'll
Genius.
get rid of these. It was like his little pet.
Genius is one word for it. Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, I feel like a lot of people have these really fond memories of Mackenzie's, and I keep like, it's never a place that was really big on my radar. I remember like drinking there once when I was really, probably 22 or 23 or something like that, and I probably had some kind of whatever their version of a Blue Moon was or something, right? There was probably some wheat beer there.
Yeah.
And I remember like thinking like, this is the craziest place. I think like in the basement there was like a really cool bar, like a downstairs, and there was games and darts maybe and stuff like that. And I was like, this is just a really cool place to hang out. But it was just a place that I guess as I started getting into beer, which wasn't that long ago, but I don't know, just I guess I never really took that place seriously, or it was on my radar as something that people were talking about. But the more that we've gotten into the podcast and interviewed people, roads kind of lead back there. I don't know if it was because it was one of the only spots for a long time, and a lot of people came out of there, but I just always hear people have a lot of respect for, those saisons and those bottles that were coming out of there back in the day.
There's two other names, like Gerard from up at Forest in Maine. He was there with Nate for quite a time. And then I believe the opening brewer was Scott Morrison. Have you ever crossed paths with Scott Morrison?
I don't think so.
I have not.
Well, I guess being an independent, I do get a little bit more freedom to say whatever the hell I want. Scott Morrison, I call him grandfather. If you know the book on saisons that Phil Markowski wrote,
I've heard of it.
Again, you'll wonder why there's a bunch of references to Mackenzie's, like this random ass brew pub in Malvern. Scott Morrison was close friends with Phil Markowski, and Scott produced some awesome saisons. Like Saison Voiture that they still brew. I think probably goes back to him. He's been around the industry for a long time. He was a mentor of mine as well. He's called grandfather because none other than Jean Broilette IV of Tired Hands referred to him as the grandfather of saison.
Okay.
I never let him live that down. How Eric he hates it because it's ridiculous. He also made a grandfather of saison, but he gets a lot of respect, and so that lineage from him to Nate to Gerard, and I'm not sure who's brewing there now. I guess that's how I'll put it. I'm not sure who's brewing there now. They've been around a long time. It's interesting at this point with kind of the project that I'm doing to look back there, 15, 20 years at what a brewery or brew pub was and where we are today and where do we go from here is one of the big questions I'm trying to answer with this project.
Yeah, I believe it. We're always talking about how difficult it must be, to be another brewery, somebody else in the mix when there seems to be a lot of competition and things, and how you can do it differently, and how do you ride that perfect formula of having some, a little bit of hype and people excited about your beers so that they're talking about it and spreading the word, but also not overproducing. And there's just so many things to go into it. It's got to be such a crazy thing to try to figure out as an actual brewery or brewer and business owner. But I'd like to talk about the
right answer either,
Yeah, sure.
Not one size fits all. So
tell us more about this beer. You obviously told us the backstory, but tell us, what's going on with the ingredients in the brewing process and what we're tasting.
Yeah, the brew day itself, a lot of the beers that I'm producing, the brew day itself is probably one of the least important days. You're making wort, and I've even played around with like taking some wort that Locust Lane was brewing, just doing like small projects with taking something they're already brewing, is training off a little bit to play with. It's the saison base. It's about 80% Pils malt, 20% wheat. Very uncomplicated as far as the brew house goes, the malt bill. We're doing a couple. You said you're not super technical or how interested you are in it. Doing a little bit in the mash tun, a couple steps, 3-step mashing to basically build up a beer that is light, doesn't sit on the palate, but making it so it still has plenty of protein left in it. Plenty of protein left in it so that it doesn't taste watery. So a lot of that can be achieved in the mash tun through manipulating temperatures and times and things like that. But I mean, that's really kind of like gilding the lily. It's a very simple brew day. There's nothing too crazy about making saison wort. It's a fairly simple process. After that, when it goes into oak, that's like what we're pitching. Temp, keeping fill level on barrels, blending back for the right level of acidity, right level of funk. That's kind of where it happens. The brew day itself is fairly straightforward.
So how are you? What's the right word? Inoculating. How are you? Is that the right word?
Did you read that in your calendar?
Yeah, I just looked that up.
Pitching.
How are you getting yeast in it?
No, this one in particular, most of the beer was fermented out with. I can use DuPont and a couple strains of Brett on some of it, and then the other half of the batch was pitched with another yeast that I use and culture from free will bottles. So that's just basically free will bottles and growing them up in starter wort and pitching and see what happens. And with anything in oak, you're getting a little bit of the character from what was in before, not in terms of the liquid itself, but the microflora in the barrel. So picking up whatever's in there plus what you added, and then just seeing what comes out on the other side and blending that. So that unpredictability is part of the game with oak fermentation, which I'm sure you've had guests on before that have talked about that. But you got to accept the fact that you don't know exactly where it's going to land. But what you do learn is seeing the trajectory of a beer, seeing like, oh, it tastes like this young, we're at this high point. I think it's going to plateau here. It doesn't get better from this point. Get it out of the barrel. And knowing where that trajectory is, where you're not sitting on something too long where it actually starts to fall again.
Sure.
It goes acidic or it tastes like vinegar or it gets weird or meaty. All these weird things that can happen. You have to know when to pluck it and get it out at the right point. And that's kind of that's the unpredictability. That's what kind of makes it annoying. As far if you're looking at this as something that's scalable, if you're looking at something is where it's always going to be 1,000% the same thing. That's just not how this works at all. So that's why a lot of breweries are like, yeah, that sounds like an awful idea. You're not going to make money at that.
So this beer specifically, was this one wort, one barrel? Was it a bunch of different barrels blended into one, or was this more of a straightforward kind of brew?
I feel like it's like one wort, two barrels.
One wort, two barrels.
Like a dirty video. It's like
we might get a spam link for that in the chat if you pay attention. Sometimes we get the porn scammers.
So this is the same wort put into two different barrels, and I actually ended up cutting it. The other thing with using the free will culture in one, and then what I would typically do in the other, I was able to kind of play back and forth with the blend level to get what I wanted. Right level of funk, light acidity. It's a pretty little. I think it's a pretty little beer. There's nothing. It's nothing crazy. It's just a nice little saison. And that's kind of what Nate and I wanted to do because this for this project, saison is a style that I know it's supposed to be the year of the lager. I'll be waiting for the year of the saison to come back. But it's a style that every once in a while just coming back to it and being like, oh, this is pretty. This is nice. There's no 13%. There's no like Dunkaroos, cookies dipped in it, all this other shit. It's like, It's nice. It's a nice little beer. Yeah.
I feel like saisons are kind of coming back a little bit. I see a couple more people doing it. I know the Seed down in Atlantic City is definitely getting out their saisons, and I feel like it might, you might be a year or two away from the year of the saison, but it's coming.
Yeah, and that's the one video that I want to do. If I knew how to actually run video program, one video that I want to do is this making the argument for petite saison or just little saisons as a sustainable beer. So given that they're predicting within our lifetimes that we're going to be some post-apocalyptic hellscape with no agriculture and stuff like that, good luck getting hops. Good luck getting a ton of malt. I mean, all these things might dry up, even with supply chain issues, we start to see little pops and business of problems. The argument for petite saison is it's not grain intensive. It's not malt intensive. You can still get, this one's a light one, but you can still get plenty of cool flavors from yeast, which require very little input from the environment. Basically, if we just drank more low ABV saisons, you don't have to truck it. It doesn't need to be chilled. to ferment. Doesn't need to be chilled to store. I mean, I think we'd save a lot of energy and a lot of resources if we drank some more of this. And you can still get plenty well and hammered on it. But it's, we get going for these like 14%, huge labor intensive, resource intensive beers, especially when we're talking about hops. I mean, I don't know, reading the tea leaves and what's coming out, how long can we sustain that? How long as an industry, or how long as an environment can we keep doing this? So I think I'll stick to petite saisons. They're easy, they're not easy to make, but they're light, they're complex, they're not intensive of resources, and they can be plenty intriguing. But
it's intriguing is a very good word for it. As I was sipping it, I was thinking saisons. People can use saison to talk about a bazillion different beers. That I feel like when people say saison, that's like the biggest range or spectrum of beers that people talk about. Like can have a saison that tastes nice and light and refreshing, but I can also have a saison that really the taste just knocks you over the head, and it's just almost too much at times.
Yeah, I've got a negative association with saisons because I think the saisons that I had early on were maybe like these heavy peppercorn spiced whatever, or I always say that they've got a funk to it that I don't like. And I know now that I appreciate a little bit of straw and barnyard, right? And
Little horse blanket.
Little horse blanket. Yeah, exactly.
Well, this being a barrel aged saison, it has that. It has those Brett notes. Here's a pet peeve of mine: the word farmhouse. For the last 20 years, at least, like breweries have wiped their ass with the term farmhouse. To like what they're trying to describe as something. It's rustic. It's malt forward kind of thing. But all the breweries over the last 20 years have used farmhouse to describe something. Where's your farmhouse exactly? Like, what does a farmhouse taste like? All right, it's a nonsense descriptor, and it's a marketing thing. And I think it honestly turns off people to a style where if they're like, hey, this is a pretty little beer, like drinking wise, like this one has, with having a little bit of funk and light acidity to it, it's not exactly fitting this bill, but a good saison should drink a lot like a Pils. What do I mean? It's not a Pils. It does not taste like a Pils. But for the consumption of it, and like it's hot out, something refreshing, something quenching, has a little bit of a crispness that makes you want to drink more of it. The experience should be like drinking a Pils. It just happens to have a little bit more of a yeast fruitiness to it. And that flavor that you're kind of describing with the pepperiness, without proper control of fermentation or knowing how to handle yeast, you can get overly phenolic saisons where it tastes like a Band-Aid. The amount of like medicinal, clove, Band-Aid type of flavor, and that's what really is gross. Like I don't enjoy that. Like they're gross because they didn't handle temps well. Because a lot of brewers think like put it in, basically they have this farmhouse thought in their idea because they read a book on Belgian brewing, and they're like, oh, you just put it in, let it ferment at 1,000 degrees, like it's like being hot, like it's going to be great. I read a book, and that's not how these styles work. So that's where you end up with the big Band-Aid bombs that are gross. When a good saison, like I said, it should have the same experience as a Pils.
I'm really excited to try more of these beers because, I think back about like the first saison that I had that made me rethink what a saison was probably Saison Hands. And I'm thinking like, well, this is actually a bit sour, and I actually really like this beer. And how could this actually still be a saison, right? And I just have no knowledge of it. And now, like, to me, anything that's got the acidity and a little bit of sour to it and some barrel notes to it, I just immediately go like, well, then it's got to be a lambic, right? And even though it's not the traditional style, but that's what I kind of want to dig into a bit more because there's this I want to push everything into this like category of like this sour acidic barrel stuff is just all fantastic to me, but I'm putting it all in the same category, and I want to learn more about it so that I can separate it and go, well, this is a lambic, this is a saison, this is what this is whatever this one is, and try to figure out what the differences are, not only in the process, but to be able to taste it and know what I'm getting. Like this, as this thing's warming up, I'm getting fruit now. that I wasn't at first. Like these fruit notes, and like I'm really blown away. You're calling this thing this little beer, and I get it, but it's just got so much flavor and so much like going on with it. I keep pouring myself more because I can't get enough of it.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's and what you're pointing out is saison as a style. Americans, in particular, I would say, I'll throw this out. We are really American beer drinkers are really, really fascinated with taxonomy. We're really fascinated with like which category is this? Like, where does this fit on this spectrum of things that I can plunk a box? You know, what box does this go in? When saison as a style was here well before people started checking beers in, and it resists the urge to people to completely understand. Before I make it sound completely esoteric, just to make the point that this style has agrarian, pre-industrial roots, and it resists our modern need to have the taxonomy. That being said, identifying the difference between a saison that is barrel aged and one that is not would be like that's the first big fork in the road.
Sure.
Where you start getting a barrel aged saisons, yeah, you're starting to veer into that thing where I'm starting to taste things that remind me of a lambic.
Right.
They remind me of the other things I taste. But lambic and saison are two very different disciplines in what they're producing. But I mean, that's the shame is and where we are as far as clean saisons being like not barrel fermented. Saison DuPont to me is still the king. Saison DuPont is, that's the thing that I want to, I want to die with that, in my, like a glass full of that. And if I were to take a keg of Saison DuPont, take the label off, put it on tap, and call it my own, people would be like, 3 out of 5, not my style. It's just a world-class goddamn beer. and I joke about it, but I was always tempted to do it. If I didn't feel really icky doing that, I would just put it on tap and not say it wasn't DuPont, and just have people bash it. Because that's where we are, where like the idea of subtlety, the idea of light notes, the idea of something that's actually enjoyable to drink and is pleasant, it makes you want to drink more of it, not because you're hearing about it online, but because, like, gastronomically speaking, this is pleasing to me. If you like that sort of thing, DuPont's your guy, but that's just not where the beer drinker is. So it's not old man shaking fist at clouds. It's just making a point, like, yeah, there's some things that are the kings of saison. But they just don't. There's no hype, and there never will be hype. And maybe there shouldn't be hype, because then there's more for all the other people.
Yeah, that really want to try it. Yeah, this thing's fantastic, man. I just I don't know, man. This I don't want to say like this style, but these flavor notes, I just keep like every time I come across something like it, that's a sour barrel, whatever, regardless of if it took, 3 weeks to get the wort out of it.
I just love that nothing is over the top with it. There's the acidity's not over the top. The funk isn't over the top. It's all there, but I don't want to say you have to dig for it, but it's not clobbering you over the head and making it difficult to drink. It's just so nice and easy to drink.
It's light, but it's not thin, if that makes any sense, right? There's plenty of flavor and plenty of body, but still just being light and refreshing. Yeah, so much flavor,
and that's part of that. That mouthfeel can be manipulated in the brew house, of knowing what steps at what temperature, what time to make things that they attenuate fully. I mean, it ferments out. This finished at 1 Plato, which I don't know anybody who's listening who knows what that means. It's fairly dry. But things that finish at 1 Plato, as far as gravity, like they can tend to get watery. This resists that because you're actually manipulating what kind of proteins are left in the beer after mashing to make it so it still has a decent mouthfeel. So that's again with the style this simple. There's only so many chances you get to do the right thing as far as technique goes, because you're not coming back after the fact like, shit, just throw fucking raspberries in it, you can't do that. And so you only get a couple chances to get things right. And this is actually one of the first saisons I brewed on this system. So already I'm like, okay, here's the things I want to change for next time. It's nice to brew this one with Nate, but of course I'm going to make some more saisons. So I'm like, okay, here's some things I would modify, for next time.
Yeah, if you still like us when the show's over, you should try to get us in touch with that guy.
All right. if you can get him to sit in front of a camera and talk to you, I mean,
That'd be a feat in itself, right?
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like.
it'll be like that creepy that in the Adams movies when Wednesday Adams finally smiles. Like it's just creepy.
It doesn't make
Shouldn't be in
sense.
front of people.
You can pass me that green bottle if you don't mind there. What should we crack next, Dan? What would you recommend next?
Maybe the strawberry ginger booch. Let's see how that one's holding up. So
What does booch mean? Like kombucha?
yeah, there's kombucha in it. Yeah, so it's good for your gut health and all that. You want to take medical and dietary advice from a guy who looks like me for sure, but it's definitely good for your gut health.
That's the number 2, right? Strawberry ginger booch.
Yes, yeah, and this one was with working with a small kombucha producer from Westchester, Tiny Changes Brewing. A guy named Joe and his wife run it, and I was attracted to the company just because of the name Tiny Changes. It kind of like just at a very superficial level, it kind of resonated with me. I'm like, that's kind of what I'm trying to do here with what I'm doing, like little incremental additions to society that have more to do than just making beer. So I was attracted to what they were doing, and then when I tried this kombucha, I was like, oh great, this like the ginger that this guy is getting. Besides being local doesn't make things automatically better. It just this one just happens to be superior ginger, and he uses a great level of it. He makes dry kombucha, which makes it great for blending into beer. It doesn't overwhelm things. So with this one, the little strawberry ginger, a little bit of sour blonde beer blended together, and Bob's your uncle. Something definitely a little bit different, but some front bodies.
The nose is definitely wild, man. There's just the ginger, a little citrus maybe.
Yeah, a ton of strawberries in that one. But what I was going with here is, like, as you noted with the saison before, I'm learning to adjust my level up a little bit, but I do tend to undershoot flavors a little bit. And so I'm learning to be a little bit more assertive with them without making things that are like overly sour or way too punchy. This one was just to do a fun project with a cool guy. So getting that ginger level right, where it kind of has a little bit of like ginger in beers can kind of taste like a little bit like cola or Coca-Cola to me. Ginger doesn't exactly present like, it's not like you're eating like sushi with like pickled ginger. It kind of has like kind of this cola nut bitter flavor that can balance out a bunch of sweet fruit.
Your talk of fruits and additives, just the way you're talking about the ginger, the strawberries, reading some of the descriptions when the peach beer that you guys do, where does your passion for that come from? The almost farming aspect of what you're putting into these beers.
When I can get good things, I mean, it's when I can get. Again, it's not just about being local. I remember a very wise man, Dick Cantwell, who is like from Elysian. He's one of the titans, like the primordials of craft brewing. Dick Cantwell. I remember saying if your business model is built on being local, you're taking a long walk off a short pier, because local doesn't taste like anything. Again, that's not the romantic thing to say, but it doesn't taste like anything. When I get a producer who makes things local, it happens to be some of the best goddamn product you can get. So just because it's local does not make it better. I just happen to know some people that make things locally that are some of the best you can get. So
yeah.
Anytime, and so if you're getting in strawberries from Driscoll's that are shipped 1,000 miles to get here, they're fine. They taste like strawberries, but they're not going to be punchy. When you can get strawberries that were grown in Lancaster, brought down, or any closer, fresh out of the field, picked at the right time, not picked at a time where they are suitable to be shipped 1,000 miles, which is to say underripe and they don't develop more. When you get things that are vine ripened, when you get things that are picked at the right point, and the guy, you can shake the guy's hand, and he's not going to give you something that's bad, that's when it tastes better. That's when local tastes good, when it's people are taking care in what they're doing. So yeah, as far as like being able to actually shake hands with the farmer, being able to actually see where they're grown, not for any other reason than I know that this guy really, when it comes to strawberry, this guy gives a shit about strawberries. I want to buy strawberries from that guy. And that's where, it's not a romanticism about farming. It's just I know I can trust that guy because I can see him and I know that he cares because his reputation's on the line. When Driscoll gets, berries from 1,000 conglomerates of farms that are picked underripe, they're just not going to be great. They're never going to be great. They're not supposed to be great. They're supposed to be available. And
They're
sometimes
supposed to be there.
things aren't available. Yeah.
Dude, this beer's so interesting, so delicious, and I'm trying to unpack it, and the words that I want to use to describe it maybe either haven't been invented before or I can't come up with them, but it's amazing. And there's this thing happening in my mouth and in my nose as like drink the beer, and as I'm actually swallowing it, these I don't know if it's the carb, but it's something more. I don't know if it has something to do with the kombucha, but there's something that lingers that stays in in the back of my mouth, in my nose, and it's a lot of fun to drink.
Yeah. I mean, do you like kombucha?
I don't drink it. I mean, I've had a kombucha or two, but it's not something that I go out of my way for.
It's one of those things where, like, if people are like, hey, am I going to like this? Like, well, do you like kombucha? Yeah, then you'll probably like this. Like, kombucha? No, you probably shouldn't get this because I mean, his culture. The thing I like about it is that kombucha, to me, I enjoy it. Things that are overly acidic, things that taste like vinegar, I don't enjoy. So, I mean, Baba's Booch out of Phoenixville, they make great kombucha. The Tiny Changes out of Westchester, I like that they're not heavily acidic. That makes them proper for blending with beer, because in a beer like this, if you're getting acidic or strong vinegar tones, that'd be a flaw. Like, that would be an off flavor. So getting a brewery getting a kombucha brewery where the culture doesn't put off a lot of that makes it great for blending.
I've never had a kombucha, so I didn't know exactly what I was going to taste when I tasted this beer. I was obviously looking for strawberry and ginger because those are the two words that I heard, and I'm getting them both, but they're in such balance with each other that, as soon as I'm like, okay, I'm tasting that strawberry there, and then there's the ginger, and the vice versa. I'm looking for the ginger, and then there comes the strawberry. When you're putting this together from the beginning, how are you achieving that balance? Is it just experience that this much ginger to this many strawberries? Are you tasting constantly and adjusting it because you have that little bit more of an option as the blendery as you're putting that stuff together?
I'd be lying to say it was scientific. It's not. I don't guess at it. It's just I love cooking. I love cooking. I love cooking in my home. I love being involved with restaurants as well, people who make food all the time. And I think that there's a certain point where you get like, after doing it for a bunch of years and you're cooking, chefs don't think about seasoning. Sometimes to a fault. Sometimes they make a mistake. But as far as like when they grab salt to put in the dish, they grab salt and they put it in the dish, and it's generally going to be great. And so, like, when I look at a 10-barrel tank of beer, I taste it, I look at the ginger, I look at the tank, I look at the ginger, I look at the tank, and something in my head says, I think this is the right amount. and I that part, not to be too esoteric, I mean, sometimes you misshoot it, but more often than not, if you get an experience for, like, okay, ginger is a big, big, punchy flavor. Shoot it under what you think. You can always add a little bit more if you need to, but generally you don't have to, because you're just knowing flavors and knowing, like, yes, undershoot this, overshoot this. Strawberry you can't do too much of. You can't. Like, strawberry is a general. And berries in general you can't overdo, because if you overshoot it, you just end up with something that's more delicious. Like, it's not that you can't overshoot a flavor like that. Ginger, if you overdo it, it can taste like a cigarette. Like, it tastes like an ashtray if you overdo it. But secondly, the ginger that he's getting is from a place called Mad Radish Farm, which is I'm putting behind me in Malvern. Like, that's anywhere.
Yeah.
Back around the corner there.
Right there. Yeah,
back around the corner. Yeah. Mad Radish Farm, and they're producing ginger. They're growing it there. They're harvesting it fresh. And when you're getting young, fresh ginger, it lacks the burn. Like, when you think of eating, like, raw ginger, it's unpleasant. When you get young, fresh ginger that's still, hasn't dried out, hasn't been grown over, it's a more delicate flavor, and so it's light and spicy and pleasant. A little lemon balmy. It's not the burny, hurty thing that you dice up when you're making stir fry.
I'm having so much fun with this. Like, these beers are so unique and delicious, and have so much character that I'm just like blown away. Like I'm having trouble coming up with words to like.
You're having a moment over there.
I'm having a moment. I really am.
That.
I really am digging these beers.
I've made a living on giving middle-aged men moments. Take it as you will.
Haven't we all?
That's such a funny thing for a brewer to say. I mean, it's true, but that's hilarious.
It's always weird when you say it like that.
It's funny that you talk about cooking, because in my mind, brewers are more like bakers. They're taking their ingredients, they're putting them together, they're going to put them in there, and they're going to come out as this. And I'm not a baker. I'm a cooker. When I cook, I'm constantly tasting, constantly adjusting. Will my salt be right? Maybe, but I'm doing a little bit something more to it as I'm going. And it seems like the blender, you get a little bit more of that, but not as much as I might think.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a like I said, the brew day is the easy day. Mm-hmm. Like the brew day generally is pretty. If you've made wort before, like you can make lambic. I'm sorry, you can make lambic wort. You can't make lambic. That's a very very different thing. And I guess it comes back a little bit to like the idea of where God makes wine, men make beer. Where the idea of wine or mead or you name X product, where basically you're trying to take a product from the field at its peak, get it fermented out and in a bottle to preserve as much of what God put into that fruit. Where brewers, this is a very mechanical process. It's a very not manipulative. You are manipulating that raw ingredient to get a predictable result. Now that could be fantastic. It can foreground great hops and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I think the idea that brewers do a lot of twisting and turning chemically to the product to make it on a chemical level, not chemically, but on a chemical level to make that product into beer. Where with wine, you're taking a grape and trying to preserve what was there before. And with a blendery, for example, I think what you might be pointing to is the idea that like there's a little bit more of you can't fake it. You can't fake it. You can't fix it in the brew house or just redo it. When you put 2 years into a project, like you better know kind of what you're doing, because you can't just fudge it a whole lot. You can blend some things out, but at the end of the day, if you're putting stuff in the blend that shouldn't be there, just throw it down the drain. It's just not worth keeping around if it's not right. So that's kind of what it's a little less mechanical. It's a little more sensory. It's sensory. It's knowing what's going to work together, what you're looking for when you're constructing and when you're blending that beer. 80% of the blend is going to be sort of your heart stock. In a blendery or in places that make this, generally speaking, they're not doing, like you said, like one beer, one barrel, and that gets batched out as a process. Generally, you're looking at, they have one or two heart stocks, where you have in the case of like New Belgium, they have a light beer that they brew and they have a dark beer that they brew. And every beer that they make is some blend of those two heart stocks. Where if you think about like a Christmas tree or Christmas tree bill, your heart stock is the tree. It's the structure of what you're going to put out of that facility, and then you're just hanging. Oh, this barrel has a little bit more of this flavor. You're just hanging little ornamental pieces or accents on that heart stock to make different blends. That's why places like Jolly Pumpkin, every beer tastes freaking great because they have great heart stock. They have great beers that they're starting from, so it's kind of tough to mess it up. Like the Jolly Pumpkin pumpkin beer is like one of the few pumpkin beers that I really enjoy. You know why? It doesn't taste like goddamn pumpkin. It tastes like a Jolly Pumpkin beer, and because their beer is great. So that's when you're thinking about that process of blending, it's really you have the culture in your barrels, you have the type of barrels that you like using, and you have a heart stock. And then when you go to blend, you're kind of accenting with little other barrels that stick out to you for some reason. But that center of it is always kind of be the same idea.
That's wild. That's
where you get the consistency from.
Sure.
Not to interrupt our great beer conversation here, but number 2 Kentucky has lost to the St. Peter's Peacocks
Who is that? And what seed is that?
They were a 15 seed
Wow.
beating a number 2 seed.
Wow.
So I'm just gonna light this piece of paper on fire when we're done here.
Fighting cops. All right. Good.
March Madness lasted very quickly for me.
The bracket is shot.
Busted.
Early. Busted bracket.
Everybody probably got blown up by that one.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So Dan, I feel like myself, I was introduced to you. We didn't know each other. I'll say I learned about you with your days at Le Cabra. Can you touch on your Le Cabra experience and how that experience there helped evolve and get you to where you are now?
Well, I mean, as far as the experience is everything. I mean, I think I came in to. I mean, Le Cabra is. I'm still an equity partner there, so I wish them an incredible amount of luck. I wish them all success. I would love for them to keep making money and doing what they're doing. I'm just not involved in operations anymore. So the Le Cabra started as a Word document. Back in the days when I was living in Malvern, and you fast forward, 6 years of working the beer yard, talking to people. I managed to link up with. I had an idea. I wanted to make beer. Guys who were, more financially sound, well-heeled. They wanted to be involved in a brewery, didn't know how to make it. We linked up. They decided I was the guy to spearhead it, and I went. So that journey of learning entrepreneurship, learning the nuts and bolts of operating a business, that experience is invaluable. I'm not using it. I mean, I'm not using the business side of things or the running an organization. I'm not using now because I have no employees, which is, some days I miss leading a team. And then there's some days where it snows and I'm like people ask me well, what was it like leaving? And here's my one story. Here's the best way I can explain how it feels to leave Le Cabra. Is it snowed the winter after I left. And I went outside and I made a snowman with my daughter. And that's the end of the goddamn story. Nobody called me. Nobody asked for it. What do we do? And so do I miss it? Absolutely. Do I love it? It's my baby. I started it, but I don't get to raise it. It was unceremoniously put up for adoption to other people. But it snowed and I got to go out and make a snowman with my daughter. That was pretty cool because I lost a lot of time. In retrospect, I would do it again all over again, but I did lose a lot of time with my kids to do it. So even if with the project I'm doing now, even if it's not as intensive or splashy, I get to be a dad too. And that means something to me.
Absolutely.
So, quick Le Cabra question. Were you responsible for the mole wings?
The mole wings? No.
Okay, then I don't need to talk to you then, because whoever did those is the guy I want to talk to.
No, the wings in general. Before opening, that was actually a guy named John Hearn, who I don't think got as much credit as I believe he should get.
We need to get him on the podcast because those wings fucking slap.
Well, yeah, the wings of Le Cabra, they're cooked sous vide. So they're cooked sous vide, delicious flavor, have all the collagen, all the yummy, juicy bits cooked in sous vide, and then flash fried. And that's one of the things that make those wings very different from other wings. But John Hearn, who actually, are you local to Westchester? I forget.
Yeah. We're Downingtown, Coatesville, okay. Westchester. Yeah.
John and another guy who worked at Le Cabra, Dan Marola, took over Roots Cafe down in Westchester. Mm-hmm. This is, I guess, 4 years ago now. Okay. They're still doing a great job down there. It's as far as the kitchen and running a kitchen, I was always kind of lucky to have guys like John or good chefs who generally weren't too crazy, had good flavors, and would work with me. So as much as I will not take credit for those wings, I will take credit for being a very difficult person to work with for a chef, because I'm not a complete idiot. I have a vision for what this place should be. I know when to step back and say you are the chef, but I'm also not going to let something suck.
Right.
It can't. Right. That's not an option. There's too much sacrifice, too much time, too much money. Actually, as a matter. So here's an example why I suck to work with. The best tortilla chips I ever had from La Cabra. There's a brand of chip that the chef brought in. The chef brought in like 3 or 4 different brands. I had one brand that I liked. It's a superior tortilla. It's a superior tortilla for chip making, for taco making, yada yada. I insisted on that brand. That's the kind of thing where a chef would usually be like, I can pick out a goddamn tortilla. Who cares? I can. And
Right.
so the fact he's like, that's the best tortilla. Thank you. That made my night. But I would get involved in little things I felt passionate about, but which is maybe a little uncommon. But I also kind of like, it's unfortunate. Sometimes I know what I'm talking about. Sometimes.
Right.
Like, it's vindication. I got a vindication right there. Thank you for that comment.
That's awesome. Shout out Fish. That's hilarious. So, I feel like La Cabra, had a really good reputation for the beer, the food, a fantastic spot, being, that's like the R5 line, right?
Yes.
So you can easily hit that and a few other great spots, in the area. But, I feel like La Cabra had a really good reputation and was kind of blowing up with a lot of other people, with like the hop scene, right? Just a lot of really good, hoppy, hazy beers. I feel like that. What was it? Like the Shatters. What were those beers called?
Shatter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Series.
Yeah. Stuff like that. I just remember seeing people going crazy for. So, that seemed to go really well, and people were excited about it. And then, it sounds like you've always had a passion. You're talking about even early on, transporting wort and making the sours and trying to barrel stuff, really early on in your brewing days. What made you decide that you wanted to focus on that?
I think I liked, and kind of like you were talking about, like the cooking element. I liked that there is a sensory. There's sensory elements in all brewing, period. However, with barrel aging and blending, there is a part that can't be quantified. There is a sensory part where you have to kind of have a feel of, I think that this much of this one with this much of this one will be right. And you can obviously go back and titrate. You can sample like different blends and have a committee and everybody scratch, sniff and all this shit. Like I kind of enjoy me being the person who says, I think that this will work. And sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it does, but there's an unquantifiable element to it. I think as far as what you might be kind of leading towards is if I die ever soon, let me put this out there. You can take it and run with it. If I write a memoir, it'll be, if you want to brew beer, don't start a brewery. Like if you want to brew beer, don't start a brewery, because the last thing that you're going to be doing is brewing beer. At some point they'll get you in a desk. Like whether you're the guy with whose face is on it or whatever, you're going to end up at a desk doing spreadsheets at some point, or going to 9 a.m. Monday meetings. And I think that part of, with La Cabra, one regret that I do have is that I feel like I didn't focus intensively enough on something that brought me joy, on something that people would enjoy seeing from La Cabra. And I feel like I didn't really focus enough on that, because again, if you want to brew beer, don't start a brewery. You're going to end up being a desk jockey at some point, because you get caught up in operating a business.
Sure.
There's only so much mental bandwidth. I'm not sure what you guys do for your day job. There's only so much mental bandwidth you can give to passion when you start getting in the nuts and bolts of making all this shit work every day. Yeah.
See, I skipped the brewery and I went straight to the spreadsheets. That's what I do. So
yet somehow you're probably doing all right more than me. All right, yeah. I went to the wrong field, man.
Well, it's really interesting to hear somebody say something like that. There's so much of that day-to-day monotony that you have to do, and then it just ends up taking away from, it probably, takes a little bit of fuel away from the fire, right? That passion, that fire that you have, you're constantly doing it, and it starts to just weaken that flame. So you decide at some point that you're going to go out and do this. Did you decide that you just needed to get out of La Cabra, or did you decide like right away that this was your path? Was there a downtime in between, or
after La Cabra, I went up to brew. I went up to brew in Pottstown for about 6 months. I went up to Pottstown United, brewed up there. Worked with Adam.
They brew a lot of stuff, right? They do a lot of contract. Am I thinking of the right place? Yeah.
No, it's a small brew pub. Yeah, they have a 4-barrel system down in the basement. And so I went up there to brew for about 6 months. Then after that, the same thing, COVID related layoff. It wasn't a great time for anybody in the industry. So I can't complain about bouncing around because it was unprecedented and everybody kind of did what they needed to do. But then after leaving Pottstown, it's just like there's a part of me that I don't want to. I don't think I do well raising somebody else's baby when it comes to brands and stuff like that. So walking into a brand that was pre-existing and operating within it, I felt like I was putting ideas into something that wasn't mine. Which at the end of the day, you need a job, you need to go work, and that's fine. But then it's not. I've been lucky to do what I love, and so if I start not loving it, I stop doing it. And it's not financially viable all the time. But I have kids; they're not starving. I have a house, I have a great wife. Like I'm not wanting for anything that I really need. And so if I get to do what I love, then don't tell her I said that because she. I've been I've been able to do what I love for many years. And when I stopped loving it, I stopped doing it.
So how did you get the hookup with the guys at Locust Lane? How did you meet with them and decide that that's where you're going to do your next project at?
The most valuable thing that I took from La Cabra was relationships. As much as I can be a bear to work with day in and day out, I think that I garnered a relationship with other breweries who I worked with, did festivals with, or partner. If they need a cup of sugar, I lend them a cup of sugar. Those relationships are invaluable. And Tom and the guys here, forever grateful to them that they kind of gave me a shot. And for them, it was like kind of nothing ventured, nothing gained at some level where it's like, hey, you're not doing sours, you're not doing barrel stuff. I'm not going to cannibalize any hoppy beer sales. I never thought that I would say I miss brewing hoppy beers, but after a year of not brewing them, frankly, I do kind of want to brew some hoppy stuff. But coming on board here, I was doing styles that they weren't doing, and so basically, I sell my beer. It's a separate brand. They have no input on branding, beer, anything. Just I work with Tom to, hey, is there a spot in the schedule where I can get a brew day in? I take the word in the back and I handle it from there. So it's a good relationship where I get to do my own thing, but I work with a team. It's the support of a team. The front of house here is helping to sell the beer. I'm being supported on that end, and from a sales front, I can do online sales across the state. But without having to buy another building and staff it full of people. So from their end, they're getting some different beers that they don't usually have on tap. And from my end, I have the support of a team that does a great job, and they're solid dudes as well.
Yeah, I gotta say, like we've had Tom on the show before a couple times. I think he was on the Brewers Roundup too.
We did the Brewers Roundup with him, and we did the 2 different shows with the fam guys
and all that stuff. But he has just got to be one of the most selfless, to me, out of a lot of the guys that I've met. I feel like he's probably one of the most selfless business owners, especially in the brewing industry, that I know. Right. I just feel like he's constantly willing to help people out and look for an opportunity to help lift somebody else up. And I don't know if I don't think I've ever said it to him or anything, but that's my interpretation and my, my view of how I see him is he's constantly looking for an opportunity to do that for other people, which is just an incredible attitude to have.
He's no dummy either. Yeah. He's no dummy. He's a shrewd businessman. But I think there's a lot of shrewd businessmen that don't have that. They don't care enough to go help other people. That's, I think, what makes him pretty special. He's not a sap. He just, he'll give things a shot. Or if it doesn't take anything from him, he'll try it. And I feel like, especially over the last 2 years, the really notable thing is over the last 2 years, still being that way. Because I can tell you that collegiality among breweries, maybe it's me kind of being on the outside a little bit, waiting for my barrels condition. I can tell you that sense of collegiality, even collabs and stuff like that. I don't know if that comes back after COVID. I don't know if it comes back. I don't know if it's fruitful. I don't know what happened. But I mean, I definitely, the sense that he's a person who cares about other people's success too. I'd be interested for maybe with your next couple guests, or as you guys are kind of picking and brains and stuff, what did COVID do to the sense of collegiality among breweries? We're still
that's a really interesting question.
We're still friends. Nobody dislikes anybody, but
Yeah.
now it's kind of like you guys. Don't tell me you didn't use COVID as an excuse to get out of some shit that you didn't want to do.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think breweries to some extent or another are kind of like, I'm just going to run my business. I'm not going to pretend like I have to go fly all over the country to do collabs because I don't know how financially fruitful they are.
Yeah.
So for me with this project, I like Nate. I want to work with Nate. I like the guy from Tiny Changes Brewing. I'm going to go do something with him. And I don't have to do collabs because I feel like I have to. I actually want to.
Yeah.
But it might be, I wonder about that if, COVID, I don't think changed anything. I think it just accelerated things that were going to happen anyways, is my sense with that. And I think that breweries, I wonder if it's just me. I wonder if there's other people who might say, like, just generally reaching out, checking in with other people. There's no animosity, but I feel like it dropped. I wonder what other people think about that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm curious as well. I feel like at the beginning, we always say that like beer people are the best people, and it's one of those industries where a lot of times, even though they're technically competition, they're not. They try to help each other out. They try to collab. We hear stories, especially during COVID, of people constantly like, hey, I need this, you have this, or I'm out of aluminum. Like, I got you. Yeah, exactly. So that's interesting. But, once everybody got past some of those supply issues and there wasn't a necessity for it, what actually happened to it, right?
Yeah. Still true that beer people are good people. I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying some of the, I think people are just really focused on their own businesses right now, rightfully so. That there's nothing crazy about that. That's how most industries are.
I can think of some examples. I know exactly what I think I know what you're getting at, and I can think of some examples that way where things got real tough, and you just got to focus on what exactly you're doing, and you just don't always have the time to, or the ability, or whatever, to worry about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All that extra stuff that's nice to do, but. What should we crack next? We need to get another beer, and we're already
I don't know if we're gonna get another 2 in. What do you suggest? The cherry?
I change it up then and do Babe, do the Imperial Stout. You like Imperial Stouts?
Yeah.
We've been known to drink a stout or 2 in our day.
Yeah. The cherry's nice. I like the cherry. Definitely should try one. But yeah, given time constraints, when you said do an hour, I'm like, we can do an hour for sure. Yeah, I can talk for about 3 hours.
No,
You tell me to shut up.
This is usually what we say after we end the show, but I love guests like you because, we're obviously here to provide content and to learn something and to get to know people, but somebody who can actually, who does a really good job storytelling and things like that, make our jobs easier. And, there's times where we interview people and we get, we start asking questions and we dig into things, and I feel like I'm out of content already. And I look over at Mr. Steve and the timer, and we're like 15 minutes in, and I've asked like 6 or 8 questions, and now I don't know where to go exactly. Yeah. And I feel like we're just scratching the surface. I thought I knew where we were going to be. And there's still more to talk about. Like, what is a ghost garden?
Thank you for saying that. I finally got to use my English degree. I feel like I feel validated now. It's really nice for me to be back out talking to people. With not, I told my wife before I left, like, I hope I don't like say, hey, I'm Dan from Lacabra. Like, oh no, wrong talking points.
Cut
Shit. Like, no, but it's being out and talking to people again. It's been really nice. Not COVID related, more just a matter of me taking a year to get stuff aged. This stuff's not fast. So it took me, I don't want to come out and talk to people until I have something to give them. Like, even you had asked me back in January to come on. It's like, well, just give me like another 2 or 3 months. I have some stuff coming. So I don't want to talk if there's not product behind it. But yeah, Babe is one of the clean beers that I put out. Brewed the wort with Locust Lane, Itzel Cap. I put it in Manitani whiskey barrels. It's dry for an imperial stout. I find it to be dry as oak whiskey, no adjuncts. There's lactose. There's a small amount of lactose, but basically just a tiny bit for mouthfeel. I don't add enough lactose to basically anybody who it's not a perceptible amount where it's added to just enough that I know that it's gonna fill in the flavor of a beer. I don't use lactose at a level where you can taste it. Even with the hoppy stuff that I did at La Cabra, like I don't want to taste it. Like I think used in small amounts, it's not a gimmick. In small amounts, it can really round out a beer nicely that's pleasant to taste. When it's overused, it's like old baby formula. Like I don't want that flavor in my beer, but it has a place in low amounts in beer. I know you probably have a lot of lactose haters on or lactose lovers on. But I think it has its place in small amounts. It can be flavor positive.
Makes sense.
I just am going to use the descriptor old baby formula as much as I possibly can. I'm taking that.
Well, that's the barley wine that I brewed down at La Cabra called, they still brew it, I think, Old Formula. The name came from that. Yeah.
That was the worst smell, man. You'd find that old bottle that like fell behind the back seat and you'd open that thing up and like, oh.
Why'd you open it, you dumb dildo? You don't open it. Leave, throw it away.
Just throw away the whole bottle.
Yeah.
Man, if I would have thrown away a bottle, my wife would have killed me.
Yeah.
I used to have 6 bottles. Why do I only have 5?
Well, let her open it then. Yeah, it's gross. Yeah, I'm on kid number 3, so I get that. No, thank you.
Man, no number 3 for me. I know it'll end up being another girl, and I just don't know if I can do that.
That's why I had to get a boy dog. I was not having 4 different girls in the house.
You got 2 girls?
Yeah.
I have 2 girls as well.
So does he.
Same. I did 2 girls. Luckily, the third one came out boy.
Did it?
All right. Yeah.
That's rare. That's like hitting a lot.
Clickety clack. Boy came out.
Don't they say like when you have 2 of the same, then your chances are like 75% to have the same one for the third or something like that?
I've never heard that.
No?
No, I've never
No,
heard
I think
that.
that's a thing. You know, but also
I know I wasn't taking the chance. I was not rolling those dice.
54% of statistics are made up as well.
That's what I hear.
What I do, usually I hook it left. Hook it right.
Yeah.
Hook it right.
That gets the boy.
Yeah, hook it right.
I'm trying to think of a different way to explain beers, because me not understanding the brewing process and just liking to taste things, if I like a beer, I say it's balanced, it's got good body, and it's well-rounded, and that's like that's like my entire vocabulary. So like the last few beers, I'm really trying to like really dig deep and think about what it is, because I do feel like these beers are giving me an experience, and not that I'm trying to compare it at all, but I think about it's a completely different thing, but the cider people, Dressler Estate, you know, maybe because it's just unique and different and out of my normal wheelhouse of hazy IPAs and pilsners and whatever, right? It's an experience, and like when I have these things, it just completely, I feel like it's like a life experience, right? I'm just like experiencing something that's completely different and amazing, and I feel like I'm actually getting it with this stout, even though there's not a there's no pepper in it or chilies, and there's no marshmallow and shit like that. There's a lot going on here that maybe it's simple, but at the same time, like I'm getting some heat from some whiskey. I'm getting like those roasty notes that aren't too bitter, but there is enough bite there that it helps balance out. There's a little bit of the sweetness, and I feel like it almost goes chocolate. Like I feel like I'm about to taste chocolate, but it's not. And it goes away.
The thing that sticks out to me a lot is like slight whiskey. They're fresh barrels, but that was only part of the blend. So again, I have my whiskey. I have my whiskey aged one. I have my one that was aged in virgin barrels, which might also be a little bit new. I don't know if a lot of people are using virgin barrels.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's never been used. It's a fresh barrel, like they use to make whiskey. So I basically have my virgin stuff, my whiskey stuff, a little bit of stainless, and then I back blend because I'm not a huge fan of liquor, frankly. When I have a whiskey stout, I don't like it to be a knock you over the head kind of whiskey flavor. I like a little bit of nuance to it. Not always a popular opinion, but I like to have that nuance. But I understand what you're saying, and if I didn't have to sell beer for a living, I think I'd probably be able to do the same thing you do. Where it's just like where it's like everything's where when I have a beer that I like, I don't want to talk about it.
Mm.
Like I don't want to talk about it. Like my only thing I say is everything's where it's supposed to be. Like all the parts of where this is supposed to be, everything is good. I want another one. That's all. Like when you really enjoy something. If I didn't have to sell beer for a living, that's all I'd ever say about a beer that I like. Is everything's where it's supposed to be. Like
I feel like
this is great. Give me another.
Yeah, exactly. No, I like that because I feel like that reminds me of a couple of things. But one, like we're supposed to be providing some kind of beer content. Like I feel selfish, right? Like we really are in it because we just love talking about beer. And it turns out that, people are willing to come on the show and that we're really interested in, that we get to talk to and learn things. But I feel like, I want to do a better job providing beer content, right? Like I'd love to really be able to pick things out and be, a connoisseur of all these flavors and things, and know that like, oh man, you can tell this one's heavy mosaic and, or whatever, pick out like, this is probably, SO4 yeast and whatever. Like I couldn't do that. You know what I mean? And, but I'd like to be, sometimes I'd like to be able to, but other times, like, I just like knowing that I'm having a good experience. I'm really enjoying the beer and what's a good way to, explain that and show that to people and get the point across that, like, I can say it's fantastic, but I'm trying to tell you why I think I am. And sometimes it's easier than others.
What with increasing vocab, or
I guess,
well, let's have a tasting. Have you done like a virtual tasting before?
No.
Yeah, I mean, if you get a 2 4-packs together, whatever listenership you have, if they want to like tune in, drink beers, and if you ever get that together, I'd be happy to be on your panel of people who aren't douchebags. And I'm a teacher, by the way. I teach full time to keep my mortgage paid. So I love teaching. I love being around people. Like sharing vocab with the beer.
I'd love that. We've talked about it a couple of times. I would love to have like a little tasting thing, and that's a great idea. Pick out a 4-pack or 4 beers, and encourage as many people as possible to go grab those 4 beers somewhere.
Yeah,
let's get them together and talk about what it is.
On who I love explaining things to people. I'm not awful at it, but also understanding that people aren't always meeting in the same place. Where like they just don't have the vocab yet. They know what they're tasting. They know what they like. It's not like their palate's broken. They just don't know how to transmit it into words. So yeah, if you ever get that together, I'd love to do it.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
It's a good idea. We shouldn't talk about it on air because somebody's going to take it from us. I really like this beer. I was a little worried when I saw the milk sugar because it's, as you said, it can just go too much. And that's what I was a little worried about. I like my stouts with a little bit of bitterness, and this has a little bit of bitterness with me. So I'm definitely happy about that. And I definitely get your descriptor of this is not a whiskey stout. This is a stout with whiskey.
Yeah. I mean, you say you like bitterness in this.
I like a little bit of bitterness in my stout. I feel like over the past, and I feel like it's gotten better in maybe the past year or two, but back a couple years ago, it was like every stout just had to be overly sweet and overly adjunct, and that's all people were putting out because that's all people were buying. But it's nice to get that bitterness back in there a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this one, it's to that metric, I could use a little bit more bitterness. Like I don't get charcoal here, where I get a little bit of dark chocolate, a little bit of burnt toffee. The whiskey's there, the oak, the twangy American oak flavor is definitely there. But what I don't get is charcoal. Where if you think like Old Rasputin, Old Rasputin, one of my favorite imperial stouts of all time, you have that charcoal note, that light bit of it that's so pleasant. Where I think to your point, I actually could use a little bit more in this one. It's like a nice imperial stout. I say I could use a little bit more of that.
Is that a Russian imperial stout characteristic? Because I always hear about that's Old Rasputin is Russian imperial stout, correct?
Yeah.
Is that, I always wonder what's the difference between Russian imperial stout and just imperial stout.
You'd have to get an expert. You'd have to get one of two things. You have to either get an expert in imperial stouts on, or get somebody who's dumb enough to disagree with beer nerds about that distinction. I am neither of those. I can tell you what I think, but I know that somebody who has the BJCP guidelines in front of them will be like, well, actually. It's like, yeah. So ask a beer nerd. I'm not a beer nerd. I'm a brewer.
Old Rasputin's one of the ones that I try and get at least one a year.
I freaking love that beer.
I could sit in the basement, and my basement's a little bit chilly, but I have like this little electric fireplace, and I could sit and just spend time with that beer, not do anything, and just drink that beer.
Yeah, we didn't get enough snow this year to have a true experience, but yeah, when it's snowing out, woo, there's nothing better, buddy. Yeah.
You know, I kind of feel like this overall evening, I'll say, is that like what I'm noticing with a lot of these beers, that these three beers are completely unique. There's nothing about them that makes me say like they're all just completely unique. They're all very, very different. But each one of them has this incredible complexity of flavors that all play so well together, incredibly balanced. It's amazing to think that the process that you started to explain, you know, that of what's going on with these beers, how difficult it is, how long it takes, everything that's going into them, that they taste this well executed. They're all completely different beers. But nothing's so like nothing is knocking you over the head. Like I think you were saying earlier, there's no ingredient that's too much, or it just makes it like I was trying to make this cinnamon stout and it's just so much cinnamon or whatever it is. Everything is perfectly put in place.
Everything's where it's supposed to be.
There it is.
Thank you for seeing that in the beer. Even I think you stepped out to hit the head or whatever it was. We were talking about like for this beer already. Like so, this is my first year of brewing wort, and now after that year, I'm finally getting to release things. And so already, like with this version of Babe, I'm happy with how it came out. I think it's a fine imperial stout. But already, like I'm looking forward to next year to brewing it again, because I just don't get. It's not one of those styles. It's not one of those styles where you get to brew it like every goddamn week. Like if you brew IPAs, guess what, buddy? Like if you didn't get on this one, get them next time, slugger, because Monday morning you do it again. But this one, you generally only get to brew it once or twice a year. So already I'm like, I have my notes like I got to up this, like a little more, a little more bitterness, whatever it is. So yeah, thank you for a first shot. I'm happy with it. I'm happy to send it out. I wouldn't send it out if I didn't think it was a solid imperial stout, but I appreciate the, acknowledging that I'm not, things should be balanced. Things should be pleasant. We can always make fine adjustments, but no, I think we're lucky as well to live in an area where generally you're not going to have any brewery worth their salt who isn't putting out good beer. Like I think we've kind of we've crossed the other side of the looking glass where, like, generally speaking, unless it's a place that just is bad, you're not going to find breweries that are putting out a bad example of a style. I don't know how many crappy beers I've had in the last 2 or 3 years. Maybe I'm not drinking in the right places to have crappy beers, but I think we're pretty lucky in this area. Like, everybody does a pretty solid job.
We're so lucky. It's crazy. I mean, not only do we have probably one of the best beer markets, right? Like everybody wants to get into our market and to sell beer here, but we also are very lucky with the quality of brewers.
And the variety of brewers doing different stuff.
For sure.
Between this and the South Jersey, it's lucky. It's just even coming from Central PA. I don't know if there's anybody who listens to your show from Central PA. I'm from Central PA, so I'm allowed to say it. I mean, the scene is not what it is here. And Pittsburgh's up and coming, or going to surpass Philly as far as the quality of caliber brewery. But yeah, we're really lucky in this market.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I know you talked about the time that some of this stuff takes. What do you have coming up that might be coming out in the next month or two here? Anything, anything fun that you're excited about?
Speaking of balance and nuance, for Locust Lane's anniversary, which is also kind of my anniversary here as well, because I started making wort like right around. I'm going to do something that's not balanced and nuanced, so I'll be doing one of those big old smoothie sour nonsense beers. the old puree beers. It's more just to show that I can do it and then not do it because I don't want to do it.
Right.
I want to make sour beers. I want to make well attenuated actual sour beers. And that's another thing that we didn't get to tonight, but I'd love to hear if you have anybody else on who, if you have anybody else on who makes sour beers, ask them how we're going to get people to transition from fruit pulp back to real sours. Because if we can't make that happen, I'm not interested. Like it's like people like I'm a sour girl. Like I love like at a beer festival. Like, oh, do you have a sour? And then you give them. Luckily, if I'm there, I can kind of I can explain what's going on. But they're expecting like froyo.
Yeah.
And you hand them a well attenuated barrel aged sour. So the term sour has gone like topsy turvy in the last 6 years. So as far as what's coming up, I'm gonna do a big old smoothie. I think I'm gonna do some pineapple, some coconut, make it fun. Drink some puree for a little bit, and then just don't do that. Last year I did one for their anniversary just to show them I could do it. Then I just don't want to do it. But on that, I have a raspberry and rose water project that I'm working on. I want to play with some rose water, like basically go to the Indian aisle and find something interesting, and the Indian part of the aisle of Wegmans and find something interesting. Like, oh, rose water, cool. Let's play with that. So yeah, some of those projects I'll be excited within the next couple of months. I'm hoping to put out some more straight, like saisons, just non-fruited, non-flavored, non-fruited projects as well. Probably have some more ready that should be able to do that. So it's a mix, a little bit of the silly. I kind of get to do whatever I want to do. Like I'm not trying to fill a tap room. I'm not trying to have a new IPA on every week. So I get to like blend when I want to blend and when I feel like I have to blend something to say something. And if I don't have anything to say, then I won't make any beer. So there's a sense of intentionality to it.
So when we had this podcast with the guy that's doing the film about bottle conditioned beers, right? And he's talking about like, listen, people don't realize the work that goes into it, and they're just starting to be over the last few years really appreciated. And people are saying lagers, coming back. Do you see do you hope? I'm sure you hope, but do you see like a trend happening where, as more and more people get exposed to the craft beer industry through exploding canned sours, through the haziest, juiciest IPAs with zero IBUs, and but then they end up having these fantastic, traditional European style beers, and then they start evolving into lagers and pilsners, and eventually finding these these awesome barrel projects. Do you see people coming back to that and maybe a growth in the market more than there is now?
That's a big question. That's a big question, and I hope I'm wrong. I don't. And so you're like, well, why are you making them? I don't think it's ever basically, let's say late 90s into like the early aughts, you saw, your Russian River explosion, Americans really getting tuned on to this thing, like Cascade and like all the guys who put beer out across the country. I don't think that it's ever been a super we're talking like with craft beer drinkers and the people who like traditional sours. You're talking about a niche within a niche. I don't think it's going to grow beyond that. I don't think it has to. Again, this is not a scalable thing. It's basically if 10% of craft beer drinkers will occasionally buy some bottles of like true sour and enjoy it and like having it out for cigar night or something special because they're not cheap. Like that's how it always has been, and that's how I hope it stays. Where it's consistent. These people know what they're talking about. They know what they're getting into. They know what the brewer's doing with this, and they enjoy it. Like sticking to that core of people and making sure you don't do goofy shit to piss them off is the right thing because they're smart. Like people who like these kinds of beers and know about them, they are the most educated of the educated beer drinkers. They're no dummies. They know when you're trying to give them something awful, and you can't lie to these people because they've been drinking this stuff since it started. Like they've been drinking, basically you talk about what was our first craft beer experience. These guys were already drinking craft beer then. And you can't lie to them because they're a hyper-educated, intelligent consumer, and they're not going to blog about you. They just won't drink your shit anymore. They won't recommend it to anybody. So I don't think it grows beyond that. And I love to be wrong. I'd love for more people to find this. I think that the sustainability argument for Petite Saison that I laid out earlier. Like
I love that.
maybe you get some people into it from that, where like this is an actual sustainable beer and happens to taste good, but it's also not resource intensive. But I don't know. I hope I'm wrong about that, but I also don't lament that because I think the people who enjoy, you talk about like the seed or fermentary form, or like some of these guys who are like putting out barrel projects. That new place by that asshole, the Furrow. I don't know if you heard of that place, the Furrow. Guy's a douche. But people who enjoy that know about it. They're really educated. They're not going to snow you. They don't, and they expect you not to lie to them with your product. And so you have to always put out good things. And I like that. I'm fine with that because I don't need this. I don't need to support a huge team of people.
Yeah, I hear you, and I love that passion and that model, and it's like I like being, that underground thing that the people that really care are the ones supporting it, and that's great. But I think I forget the guy's name, the guy from that podcast from Bottle Conditioned, Jerry.
Yes, Jerry was the bottle condition guy.
Jerry said this, and now it's become like a dream that I would love to see happen. Is he's like, you go to a restaurant, a nice restaurant, right, and they've got this incredible wine list. Like, people should appreciate, a whatever, a 6 or 8 year old Cantillon, like they do a whatever, some kind of crazy bottle of red or whatever, right? So I really get excited about the idea of like, not, imagine any fancy place around the main line having, a Furrow bottle or Furrow bottles on this like specialty list, because I think I would get really excited about that. And people, it's not on people's radar. People, go crazy about these wines because that's a good year and whatever. But like the same thing can be true with these blended aged beers, and it's not on anybody's radar yet.
I think as far as quality, that industry has been there for a long time, and if Vinny Salurzo from Russian River can't figure it out, I don't know who can.
Anybody, right?
Yeah, I mean, I 1,000% will get on that train. I think that would be awesome. I just think you like wish in one hand and poop in the other.
Right.
I guess I would make the inverse argument as a brewer who thinks that our industry, and this is one of the things that, like, is it enough to just be a brewery anymore? We're not going to get to the garden tonight or the farm part of the operation. Like, is it enough to be a brewery anymore? I guess I look at it where over the next 5 to 10 years, craft brewing is not dead. It's not dying. It's just not growing at the same astronomical rate. And I think that craft breweries need to knock it out over the skis, take care of their home base, make sure the people that are keeping your lights on are happy. I think that over the next 10 years, the average Americans could spend their money on Snapple. They could buy Snapple. They could buy White Claw. They could buy whatever new product is coming out other than beer. And so I think the pipe dream of seeing beers, bottle conditioned beers, appreciated like other wine. I think as an industry, we need to think of some creative solutions to ingratiate ourselves, to continue to entertain the drinking public. And I don't think that adjunct pastry stouts are necessarily the thing that's going to get us there. I don't think that, that's an answer. If I had that answer, then I would be like starting another brewery right away.
Right.
But just maybe some food for thought of, yeah, I'd love if they would appreciate it more. But I think we should be more focused and more lean in our planning as brewers, and just stay true to your core. Make your local population happy. Don't try to become a regional brewery. The age of regional breweries is about done. There's no more. I don't. No. Let me clarify. New regional breweries.
Okay.
I even think established regional breweries are. I've been saying for a couple of years now. You either want to be incredibly huge or you want to be small. You don't want to be those middle guys right now.
Yeah, and that's so you look at a company like Trogs, like these whales and art, like Trogs, Dogfish, Victory. the big boys in our region. What I'm saying is that with very few exceptions, there aren't going to be breweries nuzzling up into the whale class here.
No.
You know, and I don't think they should want to. Financially, I think it's a really bad idea.
Sure.
So that's, you know, I think over the next 10 years, if I can contribute something to making sour beers more appreciated, more on that wine list, that would make me really happy. Like locking arms with other people doing this and like, let's do this together. I think it's a great idea. I just think that knowing who your audience is and making sure that you keep them happy and that you're honest with them is the best approach. It's a very solid, non-sexy approach, I know, but you know, that's where I kind of choose to sit.
No, I kind of love that. We had a conversation a little while back with somebody that's got a brewery, and I tell him, I said, you know, the quality of beer that you're putting out, the brewer that you have, the beers that you guys are doing are better than most, right? But you refuse to do a hazy IPA. Okay. And if you did, I know that you guys could knock it out of the park. And you know, all of these places that people are traveling and trading for, and there's so much hype about, you guys could execute that if you wanted to, but you don't. You could have lines out your door. You guys are that good. Why not? And he's like, this is how we do things. This is the way we want to do it. This is our passion. This is the way we're doing it. And that's it. Right. And it is what it is. We're just going to keep doing what we want and with the things that we like. And then, you know, I go in there, whatever, a couple weeks later, and the place is packed. And I'm like, how good does it feel to know that you did it your way and had no reason, you know, had no thought about doing it any other way. And as much as anybody like me could try to tell you to do something different, you stuck to your guns, and your place is packed and you're doing fantastic, and people are posting and raving about your beers and whatever, you know what I mean? It looks like everything's great. How does that feel? Because that's got to be the best. Like, you know, that's like writing a song that nobody gets, and then you play it on stage and you've got people like just with their jaws dropped looking at you, right? Like it's got to be a similar feeling, right?
It's nice. That's when I would have told you, like, dude, you have so many good ideas. You should start a brewery. That's my go-to line for people who like, yeah, like, you know, like you have a lot of awesome ideas, man. You should start one. Go for it. Yeah. I'll be the first one to buy a beer from you when you get open. Yeah. But to his, I guess, I'm not for stubbornness. I think you should brew whatever the hell you want when you want to. And part of me, if you're trying to if he wasn't packed, the other inverse of that is if he wasn't packed, he'd just be a stubborn idiot. But he just happened to be packed. To his, and maybe to support his point, I think we're at a point now where we're talking about, I think you got to brew a hazy IPA to make your guest happy who's walking in. Because I always run guest-centered businesses. I always run guest-centered business. That's where I push back on the gentleman who I don't know, and that's fine. I always want to do what the guest appreciates. I'll always be like that. Luckily, what I want lines up with them because it means you make money. That being said, I think that to support his point, the other option is this, that he does brew a hazy beer. Nobody will really care there. People who like their other beer, like, oh, they brewed a hazy beer. It's not like people won't go there anymore because he brewed a hazy beer.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Maybe it's just fun to show that you can do it. But the more likely thing is if it's awesome, it's a great hazy beer. He knows it, you know it, blah, blah. Nobody in the industry will care. Like there's so much shit going on all the time that for him, it's not like he makes a hazy beer. It's like, oh my God, my revenue went up by 30%. You're a genius. I never thought of that. Like, right. Like it's more likely that you do it. And I guess I've always explained it like with Harry Potter. You're familiar, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Like it's the idea of when you open your brewery, you have about 3 to 4 months to get sorted into whatever school you're going to get sorted into. And then once you're in that school, it's almost impossible to get reassigned.
That's crazy.
But it's so this, when you open a brewery, you know, you have a very small period of time based on the aesthetic, your promotion, the opening lineup, who shows up, who's in your demographic. And then you're either an old head brewery, a cool kid hype brewery, hipster brewery. Like you get sorted And then so for that gentleman, if he brews a hazy beer and he knows it's good, you know it's good, it still won't change his sorting in the world of kind of estimation. And I feel like if you pay attention to where people kind of get like hype breweries, once you are a hype brewery, you're very lucky. If you caught that, God bless you. Like, you will ride the wave of hype, that double-edged sword. If you're a brewery that's a local place that has, local yokels and people with families come in, you're not going to get the cool 20-year-old guy with 3 nose rings, but like you'll also be able to pay your bills because you made their kid a chicken fingers.
Yeah.
So what do you want to do as a brewery? Just understand, once you get sorted, there's very little you can do to change that.
I love that. The sorting hat, like I love that idea because I constantly say like these breweries, they get like when I think of a brewery, I can exactly tell you how I associate them.
Yeah.
So that brewery does sours. That brewery is, hazy IPAs, and that brewery's European styles and whatever. Like that's their thing. God, I love that.
Yeah, you love it until you're running a place and everybody's like, you should do this different thing. And I'm like, it wouldn't matter if I did. We got like, this is where we are. Yeah. Everybody will tell you why you shouldn't have been sorted where you are.
But I really want to do this Belgian double. And like, no, but that's not you.
Nobody gives a shit. Like,
how frustrating can that be? Like you're a passionate brewer that really wants to do this style and you've executed it well and nobody gives a shit because you're the hazy IPA guy. That's got to be fucking frustrating.
A lot of it. I mean, yeah, like it's not a lamentable thing because then you're also like, hey, you're like paying your employees and running a business that affects people's lives in a positive way. If you go fuck off, like go. If you want to brew what you want, stay at home. Stay at home brew if you want. But if you want to run a business, I believe that saying guest centered is a thing. If you want to brew whatever you want, go home and brew it. It's not about that. I think for me, running a business and being involved, the one thing I miss is being part of people's lives in a positive way. The amount of people who proposed in our building, or staff members who had kids, or left, or got a degree, or went to a better job, like. All those stories in those people's lives you get to be involved with, that's the most that's for me a very, very essential part of why I want to do this, why I want to be in this industry. So if somebody says we don't like your double IPA, or hey, you should brew this style, you shouldn't have brewed that. It's really kind of, I made beer and I got involved with people's lives. That's kind of the tail of the tape for me. I'm also not dead yet, so hopefully make some more things.
That's amazing. I think
yeah, I gotcha.
It's almost time.
Should we do a toast?
Let's do toast.
How about a beer? Woo! Might Be Brews presents the toast of the week. Oh my god, dude.
I got a quick one.
Go ahead.
Claude Giroux played
Claude.
his 1,000th game as a Flyer.
Holy shit.
He was a quality dude. I think he's going to get traded here this weekend. The trade deadline, I think, is Monday.
Can he get traded? How is he not, in a walker? Isn't he like 1,000 years old?
He's not 1,000 years old. He's definitely older as far as hockey players go, but he's definitely not.
And he's still contributing.
He's still contributing. He can definitely go to
enough to get traded.
A team that's going to be in the playoffs and make a difference. They're linking him to the Avalanche, but he's the most games as a Flyers captain.
Wow.
He's never been like, you don't hear anything bad about Claude Giroux. The Flyers stink right now, but he's a quality dude, and we wish him well.
Cheers to Claude. I got a Claude jersey upstairs.
Cheers.
Cheers to Giroux.
And they actually won a hockey game tonight, so that's a bonus. 5-4.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Shout out Fish. I'm going to give him a toast quick, but my toast is probably by the time before we do the next podcast, our good buddies Brett and Laura.
Yeah.
They're probably going to have their baby.
Pop that sucker out.
That thing is ready to pop. I think she's technically, her due date is the 19th. I think we went to dinner, not that long ago, and she was pretty much saying she's ready to go. But I think by the time the next one comes out, that's going to already happen. And I might have to end up doing it again then. Who knows what the deal is going to be. But anyway, that was my toast. Toast to Brett and Laura. Cheers to you guys. Good luck with the little guy.
I hear the 29th would be a really good date to have a kid.
Is that your birthday?
That's my birthday.
Oh, shit.
Oh, it's a great day. Best day. Honestly, for my toast, I do want to point out this at the end of this month, Locust Lane is celebrating their 5th year anniversary. So Locust Lane, I have a special relationship with them. They're coming up on 5 years. So to be able to do this for 5 years, and again, build a strong business that's full of a lot of great people and still not be jaded and be happy. And that shows in their beer. It shows in their presentation. It shows in their team. And I think guests can really feel that. If you haven't been to Locust Lane in a while, if they got their little sorting cap on and you decide it's not come check them out. They're putting out some great liquid. Put it back on your rotation for places if you're close to Malvern, and especially coming up on 5 years. You can't be bad at something and do it for 5 years. Do it successfully for 5 years. So come check it out. Come check out some Furrow stuff while you're there. But a toast to Locust Lane for a great 5 years.
They were actually one of the breweries, when you were talking about the sorting hat thing, that I think has kind of changed their house a little bit. When they came out, they had their like 4 styles. They had that like first weekend and those first couple months, and I feel like people did kind of put them in that, they did those couple classic styles, but now I feel like they've branched out, and I think people are getting a little bit more into the stuff that they're doing, and I think it's they're doing a great job.
The push is still for those guys. Again, I'm not formally with Locust Lane, but I love the hell out of their business. If you haven't been in a while, come check them out. Doing a lot of new beers. I've also got a couple things on that I work with them on some of their projects as well. So yeah, come check them out if you haven't been around for a while.
Yeah, I love those guys. Fantastic people, fantastic beers. We got to do another show with them. Dan, I think we could do another 2 shows. Easy. We've got another 4 hours.
Not like that.
Yeah, I think we've got another 4 hours. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm so glad we finally hooked up. Yep. And I want to do it. Let's figure out the tasting thing. Let's do a tasting show. And I'm telling you, man, you were so much fun to talk to. Anytime you have anything going on, if you think there's a place that we can help you, let me know.
Yeah,
because I would love to hang out and talk again. It was just a fantastic time. You were a great guest, and I'm so thankful for the time and the content and the beers. Jesus Christ, the beers are so good.
Thanks, man.
He gets a shout out on those beers. All right, but let's wrap this thing up. Guys, if you took the time to watch, to listen, to hang out with us, we really appreciate you. Big shout out to Dan, the Furrow Blendery. Make sure you look him up online on social media. Make sure you're following us, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the good stuff. But if you took the time, we appreciate you so much, and we will talk to you next time.
Long fast.
All right, we're back. We're still on the internet.
You are still live.
But we are not recording anymore.
That outro song.
We're still on the internet, so anything you say can or will be used against you.
Oh no!
Any bongs that you smoke, we can still see.
Yeah, it's like,
that has happened to us.
Big, yeah.
Is she having an IPA? What does that mean?
I don't know what that means.
Is that talking about Laura?
I think so.
Like an IPA?
Fish might have started early. I don't know.
Baker Mayfield. What happened to him?
He was talking like he was not going to go back to the Browns, but I don't know where he's going or if something else happened that he's poor. I don't know. He's got to have enough money from all those damn commercials he did.
He did a lot of commercials.
Did a lot of commercials for somebody that sucks.
So did Haas.
Haas?
You didn't remember?
Oh, yeah.
When he did all those commercials and Drive to Survive.
Yeah.
Dan, I don't know how you are about sports or what kind of time you have. I'm just going to tell you because we're talking. On Netflix, there's a documentary called Drive to Survive that's kind of like a F1 documentary that you talk about the drivers and the coaches, the principals they call them, and behind the scenes of the teams and the races. I watched it, got completely hooked into the sport, and what I love the most about the sport is that it's most of the year, and it's because it's usually overseas. It's early Sunday mornings, so before football or before things really kick off for a Sunday afternoon or whatever, you can usually get a race in, like wake up and throw the race on ESPN2 and watch it. And look, NASCAR is bullshit, right? It's left turns and whatever, but there's so much drama, I think, in Formula One. If you take the time to learn it a little bit, just like, what do we always say? What's the NFL, John? Hard Knocks, right?
Yes.
You watch Hard Knocks,
Documentary.
and then you can't not root for that team a little bit that season, right? Like you get to know all the players and you get to know the coaches and you get to know their struggles and their strengths, and you're like, man, now I'm like a little bit invested in this squad and I want to see what they do.
They got you that production value.
Yes. So I think they do that really well with the Netflix thing. And me and a handful of other people, I feel like I'm trying to convert people to Jesus or something. Like I'm annoyingly like pushing people to something that maybe they don't care about.
I didn't wake up today thinking about Formula One. I might wake up tomorrow thinking about it. That's the best you can do. Well, let your little light shine. Let your little light shine.
Yeah, nothing wrong with whatever you're into, but I'm just saying, I'm putting it out there.
On my bucket list. On my bucket list are two things. I want to see the Aurora Borealis, like the Northern Lights.
Yeah.
And I want to watch football on Sundays. I have an equal probability of those two things happening in my life. I have these children and this damn job and all this stuff. I wish I could. No.
I got to pee again, so I want to give you an out if you want to roll. If you want to hang out for a couple minutes, give me 30 seconds.
Kids, I might roll as well. And I'm out. I sat back here in the back of the brewery and I didn't get another beer because I valued Mike Fisher's time. I think I will head out unceremoniously, and please do let me know if there's other content. If you want to have me as part of a panel for anything or tasting or yada yada, it's fun. I like getting out and chatting again. I haven't done it in a little while, so it's
been amazing, dude. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. You've been amazing, and let's stay in touch. All right.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye, everybody.